The future of food. Will we stop eating meat? Award-winning futurist researcher, keynote speaker Nikolas Badminton joins us on Canada Now. And Nick, this subject really blew up in the New York Times, what, about a week ago? Is the pandemic steering us in that direction?
Yeah, it's an interesting time. We were already seeing people eating more plant-based diets starting to explode way before the pandemic, and now with all of the news from meat processing plants and the practices there, and people getting sick and really questioning those practices, a lot of people are really seriously considering about stepping away from meat altogether and to step into the world of vegetarianism, pescatarianism, and even veganism as well.
Well, many are beginning to question, Nick, just what is essential these days. Will we question just how essential eating meat is?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really difficult. I mean, to get protein that we need to be able to live our lives is still really important. So we do need protein alternatives, and companies are really starting to step up. A company called Just has now got egg substitutes. Then we're seeing Beyond Meat and Impossible, and a lot of other companies really sort of having explosive growth right now. And I think that the people are going to start working really hard to see about changing their diets. We do have to realize that this is a world of privilege when we talk about changing our diets, right? Going to buy even organic meat or buying better produce and whatever. So we have to look holistically at what humans want and what people want and how we can feed communities sustainably. And, growing vegetables and fruit can actually happen in inner cities, in sort of more struggling neighborhoods, and we can create cooperatives that can really help this change happen.
In continuing to discover if this change were to happen, what would be the motivation? Also, of course, in consideration is the animals and they're living with dignity. Is all this part of a bigger question in how empathetic we will be coming out of this pandemic?
You know what? For thousands of years, we've domesticated animals and we've eaten them. I mean, this is part of the cycle of life, as what a lot of people think. But yes, I mean, now people are starting to step up and think, was that cow or was that chicken treated in a particularly fair way? Well, maybe I can't even stomach the idea of how slaughterhouses work, those being killed, the food supply chain and how it operates today. And this is going to be down to personal choice. I personally am a meat eater. I am now buying purely organic meat, but I'm also in a privileged position to be able to pay for that as well, right? But I've lived most of my life. My father actually worked in a slaughterhouse for several years, and I grew up in a village where it was based around the meat processing business. And, it's ingrained in society, and it has been that way for thousands of years. So it's not all going to suddenly change. We're not suddenly going to turn into, 7.5 billion people not eating meat. It's just not going to happen. That's not going to be sustainable for life to happen in every corner of this planet. And, societally and culturally, it's still important practice. Sometimes from religious practice through to, community get-togethers and whatever, everywhere from, Hawaii to New Zealand to, even the barbecue spit roast pigs that we have in North America. There's some ceremony to this as well. So, we're not going to disrupt culture entirely, but a lot of people are going to make decisions to, dial up their empathy and work back into plant-based meat. And I actually think that people are just going to dial up more plant-based food in their diets rather than replace meat altogether.
That might be the way I go, because I've been, thinking about eliminating meat altogether, because there's been a number of people in my life that have done that. I thought, maybe I can do that. And part of that as well is boredom, but then eventually I'll get a chef on the show and they'll talk about making this and making that, and maybe I'll be interested again all of a sudden. We've covered on the show like how meatpacking plants can become the ground zero of the second wave. And I'm not saying that isn't true. It's an option. We've talked about it on the show, but I'm not sure how much that is actually landing with people and whether they're weighing in on that. But if they think that might be a possibility, do you think that would be a deterrent from keeping meat in their diet?
You know what? I don't think we can point at meat processing as ground zero these days. I mean, we look in southern Ontario. We've got we've got a lot of farms where we've got the virus spreading there. So, I mean, is that ground zero? Are schools reopening going to be ground zero? Are offices reopening going to be ground zero? I think we need to have a little bit more of a balanced view on the world. This virus is here. We need to deal with it. We need to have processes and safety, biomedical safety procedures put in place. Whether you're processing meat, whether you're in school, learning. So really, I don't think this is going to be something that really changes our habit. It's going to be a personal choice, and it's going to be based on the ethics and treatment of animals altogether versus how humans are interacting with that supply chain.
Have you heard of those that would say that, hey, if we're going to guard against future pandemics, part of that is eliminating meat as part of that process, or eliminating meat as part of that process?
You know what? I think that there's been a lot of discussion around wet markets. I think what we need to do is really control wildlife markets that happen in some of the wet markets around the world. A fishmonger on a high street in Canada is a wet market, so we can't just say all of those are bad. And there are thousands and thousands of wet markets across the world, in the hundreds of thousands that are societally acceptable and very clean and very safe. But the wildlife markets that bring in exotic meats, yeah, that's an industry that really needs to disappear right now.
You talk about eating meat being habitual. Could this all be a political issue? Like, is the meat and dairy industry just way too lucrative to do away with?
Well, it's like any industry. I mean, we're seeing a failure of the industrial complex as a whole, oil and gas and other fossil fuels, the way that transportation works, the way that supply chains are working, the way that goods are produced and how globalization spreads them around the planet. So, we've got meat processing as part of that industrial complex. And we do need to rethink how this does work. Are we going to end up in a future with fully automated processing plants where there's higher standards, it can be produced more cheaply, maybe everything can be organic? I would like to see a future where there's more responsibility around the food supply and at scale. It's been cost-driven right now, but I think that we need to change how people make money from the essentials in life like food and start to drive ourselves down to a zero net margin society.
Well, now's the time to think about it. Check out NikolasBadminton.com. Futurist researcher, keynote speaker, Nikolas Badminton. Nick, always a pleasure, my friend. Let's do it again next week.
Absolutely. Cheers, Jeff. Take care.
All right. Thanks, man.